course, Pittsburgh, Philly. Oh, so many familiar faces and new faces to me and our work. Thank you so very much for joining us. So this evening marks the beginning of our 2022 and 2023 speaker series events where our themes align with our 5-part professional development model. And so those themes consist of doing the internal work, which is what you will experience tonight, the history of race and racism, slated for August 2022, race in the profession, slated for November of 2022, and then what about the children, race and healthy development, positive racial identity, and lastly, putting it all together, strategies and implementation will be part of our 2023 speaker series. So you want to make sure that you keep up with us on our website, racepride.pitt.edu, as well as on social media at the Pride Program to keep up with our speaker series events as they continue to flow. So all sessions for 2022 will continue to be virtual, and each session will feature local and national experts, scholars, and practitioners in the field, along with a creative offering from a featured artist, right? Because we know from the research, our wonderful Pride pop-up mini art festivals that we hope to bring back next year, and now our Pride Family Art Time series, which is bringing those festivals to folks' homes virtually. We know that the arts are an effective strategy for helping young children develop positive racial identity, as well as helping us learn and express different parts of ourselves, including our lived experiences with race. So in that vein, before I introduce you to our amazing featured guests, I'd like to share an original poem with you as the guest artist for tonight's event, which is me, to open our hearts to one of the many ways and whys of this important work, right? This poem really lets you know why this work is important. And as I share the poem, and some of you may have heard it before, but it may be new to a lot of you, as I share the poem, feel free to share what you may think, right? What thoughts come up, what you sense, right? Like what comes up in the body for you, what your senses are telling you, what you may wonder, or what you may feel in the chat box. And this poem is still untitled, y'all. All right. There once was a little Black girl with long sandy brown hair and skin the color of cinnamon toast and brown sugar. That's what her mama called her bubbling brown sugar. There once was a little Black girl with a smile that could bounce off walls and open up the sky, and infinite possibility in her heart and mind. But as she grew, it began. In the car ride on her way to school, beneath her and her mama's pleasant banter, the closer they got to those familiar gates, that courtyard, that church on the left-hand side, all of the possibility was replaced with the familiar anxiety. And every day of the week, she walked that courtyard slowly, trying to prolong what she knew was inevitable inside that school building. See, this little Black girl didn't know she was as beautiful as blossoming cherry trees, because all she retained was the cruel refrain of weaponized chants: flat-nosed freak, flat-nosed freak. She didn't know of the majestic heights she would reach. All she knew was her facial features didn't represent what beauty could be. She had never seen a face like hers adorned on TV, not in Miss America pageants or Malibu Barbie. And she felt herself disintegrating outside in, dig by dig. Imagine what goes through a young child's mind when they are unable to find their own reflection, their skin tone, their hair texture, their wide nose, their full lips. One word: invisible. How can you love what you don't see? She swallowed a sea of tears for years, wading through the echo chamber of their cruel laughter, rippling, reverberating. Each word was a burn, each hurt left a scar, each cut penetrated the essence of how she saw herself. Now, as you may have guessed, that bubbling brown sugar little Black girl was me. And as much as I wanted to love myself, there was this confusing layer of complexity, because who I was racially bullied by were kids who looked just like me. My mama was my Black Madonna savior, and eventually I encountered an educator later who saw the value in all of me, teaching me to see it in myself. Each word healing a wound, each hug repairing the gaping holes of rejection that pierced me like bullets. Over the years, as a teenager, I learned that my melanated roots carried the heritage of ancient baobab trees, that this nose was a sight to behold like the majesty of the Sphinx. Learned to embrace this exquisitely designed face, and like Kendrick said, I got royalty inside my DNA. I had to break down the lie, restructure this life, now feeling like I can reach the heights of Mount Everest, my Black girl magic dissolving internalized racial inferiority, every shade of Black worn like valiant armor, like the power of rolling thunder, no longer suffocated by the self-hate I was fed by the polluted air of racism we all breathe. No, my Blackness is the vastness of 63,800,000 square miles of Pacific Ocean and as endless as the night sky. I finally learned how to glow up from the inside. But now I know, looking back, that what this little Black girl needed was pride. So that's the poem, everyone. All right, feel free to share anything that you are thinking, sensing, wondering, and feeling in the chat, any response that you may have. One of the ways that I was able to get more in touch with and more self-aware about my experiences with race and racism, which is a lifelong process of being and becoming, right? I'm still working with it, right? It was through Yoga Roots on Location's Raja Yoga, anti-racist, social justice, trauma-informed yoga teacher training that was also a self-care boot camp led by our dynamic guests. So let me tell you more about them. Felicia Savage Friedman is a wellness thought leader and Raja Yoga guide and founder and CEO of Yoga Roots on Location, LLC, and is 200-hour certified registered anti-racist Raja Yoga School and mother of Cleveland and Maya. For over 30 years, Felicia has transformed lives with embodied anti-racist organizing through Raja Yoga. Standing firm on the belief that we are all bound and dehumanized by systems of oppression, she envisions a humankind where we have dismantled these systems of oppression and humanely rebuilt new systems together. Felicia's integrative practice ranges from individual to corporate wellness centered in communities of accountability. And her bio is way longer than that, y'all. Sheba Gittins is a compassionate, joy, and liberation heartivist and co-director of Raja Yoga teacher training and mother of Alun. She is an arts educator, co-creator of space, facilitator of joy, organizer with community, and a weaver of truth. Utilizing a multitude of mediums, Sheba presents workshops, co-creates integrative arts experiences, facilitates affinity group spaces with folks of the global majority, and exists as a member of humanity. Both Pride artists and both wonderful dynamic sisters that I love very, very much. So I'm gonna pass the mic to Felicia and Sheba for their kitchen table conversation. Pull up a seat.
Dina, that was amazing and incredible. That poem was powerful and nourishing and bountiful and familiar for me. It was very familiar. And hearing the story again and hearing it from another body offers me continued space to nurture that hurt child within who had those narratives offered to me about how I should be based on the society I've inherited. Ooh, thank you for that poem, sis.
Yeah, that I don't know how I can follow up what Sheba just said, other than with my tears, yeah, I was that little girl. I can relate, and it's still an active process of healing, because I still play those messages, that's how ingrained, it's foundational, and so it takes so much intentionality and deliberateness to create a new narrative for myself. So I too felt the intensity, and I love it, where you're saying the glow up from the inside. I was like, I know that too. Yeah, pride, and that pride comes from being oppressed, though. It's a response, right? It's a response. And, you know, and I prayerfully am able to see the day when our children and when we don't have to have pride, right? We can just simply be,
exist. Yes.
you know, to exist. But until that day, you know, that's a poem that I really, yeah, I can relate to. And it's really makes me tender. I'm tender, Sheba.
Yes, I feel it. I feel all the feels because, you know, Medina also named in her introduction the work that you have offered humanity, which is essentially, and we were talking about it earlier today, like space to actually openly unpack oneself in relationship to humanity and other people in our act of being. And I think that's an important part of any conversation that is held and hosted and that we co-create with one another is that we're very clear that life is walking into that conversation with us. Our history, our memories, addressed and those that are not addressed.
Right.
And so, Big Sis, I'm wondering if this is a space where I could offer us a grounding into the conversation. And so I'm asking everyone who is listening, if you have the spaciousness to engage, please engage. If this is not for you, then continue doing what you're doing. And what I'd like to invite is a moment for us to be intentional about arriving into this space and recognizing that our listening ears, our bodies are coming into the space with energy that precludes this conversation. And so we'll be listening from those spaces, talking from those spaces, sharing with one another from those spaces. So let us take a moment to acknowledge those spaces. And so I'm going to invite everyone to just chill, sit in your seat, where if you're standing, wherever you are, just give your body a posture of chill in the way that that resonates with you. And I would like to invite you to, you know, if you're standing, sitting, whatever the vibe is, press your feet down. Really feel your toes in your socks, in your shoes, feel it pressing on the ground below you. Really feel your hand pressing anywhere on your body that feels comfortable. And I want you to just listen. Just listen to yourself. Without critiquing, without shifting and adjusting how you are being, just really listen to yourself for a moment. And this is a practice that Felicia actually really supported me in checking in with myself as to why I struggled doing it. That act of stillness. So together, we're going to be in our bodies in stillness for a moment, just listening to our breath, listening to our body. And so I'm going to stop talking for 2 minutes as we share this space. And as we are here with our eyes closed, eyes open, gaze lowered maybe, I want you to invite a gentle rock, that comforting rock and sway that may show up in times where you need a little bit of soothing, or something is really delicious and you're like, this is good. We're inviting that sway into our body, inviting our heads into the sway, not too much, just allowing our body to do what it needs to do for itself. And as you find your sway, I'm going to invite you to, anytime you feel ready, create small circles with your body, whatever that means for you. Sometimes we think stillness is, not moving. And really, it's a matter of getting in connection with the mind as well. Even when I sit still, my blood is still circulating throughout my body. There's movement there. Breath is coming in and out. There's movement in the rise and fall of where that breath is landing. And so take a pause in one part of this gentle movement of our body. Just take a pause, breathing into that space, exhaling out, and rotating in the opposite direction. And really just saying, hey, body, we are here right now. Actually say this to yourself, please. I am here right now. And I know that I had a day. And in my day, these things happened. And I am coming into this conversation feeling, and when you find that feeling that you're coming into the conversation, I want you to name it as you pause into a space, take an inhale in, acknowledging what is coming into this room with you, exhaling out any judgment about what's showing up, inhaling in once more, exhaling out, and find our body back to center. Folks trying to act like, sis, it's like we're socialized to think that we're not coming into the room with all of the stuff, like it doesn't show up with us. And it's deeply impacting our ability to be in communication with ourselves and others. And so for the folks who are listening, I invite you to, in the chat pod, maybe drop one word for what's coming into this space with you. And Felicia and I are going to also name some of the things that are showing up with us. And when you've written, take a look at what other folks are navigating in the space as well. This is a very gentle way that we can be aware of who's in the room with us, what energies are circulating the space, and how we can be gentle and caring with ourselves and others. Awesome. And Felicia, this is where I do have a thought question for you, because this is something that I learned in the yoga teacher training myself as well. There was a part of me that used to suppress myself in the way that I felt, because I learned that there was no space for it. And in the yoga teacher training, I recognized that there's always spaciousness because of how time actually lives. It's an arbitrary construct that we abide by within a 24-hour parameter. But in truth and in fact, time is infinite. And so what I learned is this act of arriving. Like what we did in that grounding is arrive into this moment with each other and individually, so that I can still be that individual in the collective space. And so I'm curious how that feels in your body when you think of this idea of the self-work.
Self-work. Woo. Yeah, this is I'm humbled to be here at our kitchen table. I love this. I hope you all understand the treat that you all are being able to experience. you all get a window view into how Sheba and I relate to each other. And I'm humbled. I am humbled. Self-work, the way we show up. We usually put on these faces, these illusionary faces, these front faces. And what I really wanted to do with the yoga teacher training is I really wanted folks to bring their authentic self. I'm the cussing yogini, so I'm gonna watch it though, right?
Unless we don't have to.
So I'm going to taper it a little bit, but it's so important for us to get in touch, be able to have space, just as you provided for us all in this moment, to just drop in and notice, how am I feeling? To give me space, to give each other permission to do absolutely nothing in that moment, and really be able to check in when most people haven't done that at all during that day. We just don't get a break, or we feel as though we're still in time from work or whatever, right? So to really set up the yoga teacher training for us to do that on a regular, for me, it's incredible, because then I get to be with myself, and I get to be with myself, right? Because folks ask, how you doing? Well, I don't know, because I've been running around. I haven't stopped to check in. So that taking that time, giving myself permission to take that time to really sit still and notice, or not sit still, because, neurodivergent folk, sitting still is a whole nother level for them. So doing whatever you need to do so that you can check in with yourself was priceless. And so many folks talk about that. Like, you just gave me space and time. So then I can ask, how are you doing? And then you see that folks are really going into a space of self-reflection and introspection, even without saying it, right? Because you sit still, I'm thinking about how I'm feeling, and my emotions with our Museum of Feelings. We bring that in. I drop in and notice how I'm feeling. Well, why am I feeling overwhelmed or tender? I think I tried to write, yes, Diara. All these names I'm seeing that I know. So shout out to all y'all. It's beautiful to see you, family. So to give that moment to drop in, and then, why am I feeling overwhelmed? Then I can look back and start to reflect on, oh, that happened. This is how I responded, or how I reacted. And it really supports a self-reflection process unlike we've ever been given permission to do, and the level of clarity that people have at that point is, it's mind-boggling. Our check-ins, I think we checked in, with 30 people for a whole 3 hours, right?
Yep. Just the entire Friday.
Yep.
And part of Saturday.
Right. That's so important. And people were so overwhelmed with all that they were feeling, so we can't even begin to look at some of these bigger, issues of oppression when we don't even know where we are. That's like me trying to get to Oakland, California, but I'm in, New Orleans, and I think I'm in Brooklyn, you're not going to get to Oakland. It's a different route, so being able to really drop in, notice what's coming up for us. Why are we feeling this way? And being able to have time to think and reflect on that, because what we do is we're preparing folks to really look at how we have been oppressed. We've all been oppressed, and how we're oppressive, right? But you can't even begin to do that work until that social emotional happening is happening for us in our own bodies and mind bodies, and then in a collective space where people are holding each other accountable, just like you did with me. So I shared this strategy, but then we're in a space together, and you give me permission and opportunity to practice, as a teacher, there's no greater feeling. There's no greater compliment than to see one of your students, and you were a student, but you were also a trainer.
No,
I'm getting in the head, but it was beautiful because as a student in that 2016, 2017 training, Sheba, you brought your full self, and you brought yourself so much so that I was able to learn from you. I'm able to learn from anyone. I understand that. Able to learn from a baby. But what made it so incredible is that we were expansive with the space, with the yoga teacher training. We got through all of what we needed to based on Yoga Alliance's certification, but all the deliciousness, how we really were undoing oppression within ourselves those weekends. And you really brought your full self, and you shared vulnerably, and you taught me. And I was like, oh, there's no way you can do this training. So that's why, it's like, oh, it's just so delicious.
Felicia, a part of that, if I'm being honest, and even thinking about the conversation here today, when I was in school, I was told to shut up, sit down, don't ask too many questions. I was told to listen to the teacher, even if I felt like there was a value that didn't align with my value of being and existing. The construction of the school itself also told me I didn't belong. Chairs that were not in my body size and in the size of others, not having accessible space for students in wheelchairs, on crutches, whatever the vibe is. Right. And so I went through a process of feeling like I didn't have any space to exist and be. So when I think about the conversation of why is it important to think about who I am in the relationship of talking about race, it's because I have to think about all of the history that brought that institution to telling me to sit down and be quiet. Right. And so when we came to the yoga teacher training, that was a space where I discovered that I wasn't too much. Where I was literally right on time in my arriving to self. And so a lot of the work that I had to do and still do is to find myself in the way of graciousness and love and care for the thoughts that still arrive in my mind based on how I've been socialized through television, through magazines, through movies, the things that we learn about humanity. And right now we're consuming more information because it's readily accessible. And that too is a distraction in how we're checking in with the way that our behavior and thoughts are showing up in this realm. We're always emoting. That's why children know. Children know. They are in the perfect posture of being free to emote what is coming through their body, the energy. Then they develop that logical mind that then starts to interpret the messages that we're sending to children in the way that we are being, not just saying. And that's what folks don't check in with. It is how you are that actually influences a child the most. Absolutely. Because their job, which they're doing a lot of different things, they're growing teeth, growing and getting bigger and taller and more, developed and organized in their presence of the world, interpreting the world. And we ain't, the world we got right now is a little sus. So that interpretation then is juxtaposed with your home and then juxtaposed in a system that doesn't value you. Right. So that little brown girl that Medina was talking about got the love in the car, but as soon as she left the car, that institution couldn't hold her. Right. Hold me, hold you, hold the bodies of the folks possibly on this call, maybe, I'm not sure. You know your story. Yes. But if you know your story, you need space to check in. Right. Is this really how I feel? Mm-hmm. Is this for real how I feel about myself? Right. I grew up hating myself, Alicia. Let me just name it. These institutions, and I am going to cry because I keep seeing the bounty of breaking these cycles and the humans that are produced, the beings, the children who are growing into loving themselves from the conception of themselves. And it's an absolutely brilliant strategy to deconstruct systems of oppression. Mm-hmm. I was that girl who couldn't see herself
Mm-hmm.
because all of the energy, majority of the energy coming towards me from institutions that were supposed to help grow me told me that I wasn't valuable.
Mm-hmm.
And there were pieces of me that would be acceptable if I played the political game of being respectable.
In that box.
Yeah. Yeah, if I stayed in that little box of existing,
Right.
that box of assimilation.
Right. Right.
And so I think about, these conversations around race. First of all, schools aren't even talking about the history and construction of whiteness. So what conversation are you having about race when you're not looking at the history of its inception?
Right. Right.
It was birthed. It was a thing that was birthed into this room.
Absolutely.
So I'm gonna stop there, big sis, to take your thoughts, because a lot of things are coming to the surface for me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, not talking about whiteness and the hierarchy of whiteness, which is white supremacy, and we've had this conversation many times, in as much as we have to talk about whiteness. And whiteness in and of itself is not bad, right? But it's the supremacy of it, the hierarchy that says, one way of knowing being is better than all the others.
Yes, that right there.
And that is really crucial as I think about children, teaching children, because, elementary ed, and you're right, in as much as young folks can hold the duality of life.
Yep.
We socialize them out of that through the socialization of schooling, and assimilation, right? Even before they go to school, So it's really important for us to be able to continue as best as we can, that it's the both and. There's not one is better than the other. That's why I really detest, if there's anything, a strong word for me, is I detest competition. And for those of you who don't know me, I played basketball in high school. Not a student athlete could I be, so I chose the academic. I couldn't hold down both of them. So those of you who are student athletes, more power to you. But what I don't like about, sports, organized sports, is that it's the competing. And competition forms the basis of this hierarchy. One person is better than, one team is better. I really, my prayer for us and our humanity is that we're able to be more childlike. Children want everybody to win until they're socialized out of that.
Yeah.
Because they want to be popular then, and they want to be first. But that's because they've been acculturated by adults. But when you look at children in the natural way that they play, they'll go to the person who's, last in line. They'll reach out and help someone who fell down, that cooperative understanding of life.
Yes.
They don't go for the competition. They're taught to be competitive. And that hierarchy it's dangerous to us. It hasn't worked. First of all, like if it hasn't, it's not working.
It's not working.
It's not
never
working
works.
to help us to be more humane to each other. That's not working. So really having that cooperative model, that's what I love about cooperatives, just the working together, like we all, and there's enough food, there's enough money, right? If we don't idolize, the people who are at the top, and they need to share. Absolutely. No one needs to be that wealthy. And that's a dig on capitalism. Absolutely not. Because when people are wealthy, then that means people are poor. It's a definite, those two ends. And children know that we need cooperation. They inherently know that. And so we need to listen to the children. you know, and I'm not being all biblical, but we really do need to listen to the children.
Yeah.
And we need to support that. But also we as adults have to believe that and have to live that. Because you can talk one thing, you know.
Yes.
And like I remember, you know, being raised among smokers, you know, Felicia, don't smoke, but you're smoking, you know. So we as the adults need to live a more cooperative kind of lifestyle and to see and be honest where we're competitive, you know, and being honest with our youth, our children, would be a pretty revolutionary move. You know, like I am competitive and being honest with that. I don't want to be as competitive. And so these are the steps that I'm taking, and your children will see you. They learn from how you live, and you shared that already. Children learn from how they see the adults live. They don't learn from what we say. And truth be told, you know, I'm a 2-time alum from Pitt. We don't learn at school, you know, to be cooperative. It's very competitive. It's set up that way, you know. But that cooperative understanding of life is crucial, because then that would, if we really instituted a cooperative model, then all of the oppressions would not be able to exist, because we really care and we see that we care on a daily basis, you know?
And as this feeds me, this feeds another.
Absolutely.
It doesn't become mine, mine, mine. It's a part of what becomes ours,
right,
as all of humanity.
Right. We're all,
and people,
that's real.
Yeah,
we're all
people
fed.
We're all fed, and that is accessible. I know it to be accessible.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things that's really interesting is we are socialized to avoid our pain.
Ooh.
You get Tylenol, you get something to suppress the neurons that are telling you pain exists.
Right.
You're also told to suck it up, right? You're harmed in the way of how gender is used to address pain.
Ooh. Oh my gosh.
We are told about grit. How strong can you be in this oppressive structure? That's going to tell me how much grit
and
you
resiliency.
have.
Can we stop?
And resiliency.
How much like that?
All of those things are in relationship with not really taking the time to access ourselves. Who am I as an individual in this realm at this time in the year 2022? And who does this body represent historically?
Right.
My body doesn't exist alone. My body exists in the body of history, those who have come before me, the ancestors who have done the work to keep this land here for all of us.
Right.
And I'm talking about the entire massive land that we exist on throughout the world.
Mm-hmm.
And how are we keeping the hurt and pain, the suppression, the avoidance, the practices of not engaging, the praxis, how are we away from that through the distractions that are invited into our lives on a daily basis?
Right.
And so when go ahead, Big Sis.
I was thinking about you starting us out with the grounding and the stillness, right?
Right.
But then that's when we're in touch with our pain. You know, I know for me personally, you know, to self-disclose, I'm managing some overuse injuries that got reactivated here recently. And so, and I know why that happened, right? I know it had a lot to do with the overachieving, because I wasn't enough. I didn't feel as though I was enough, you know, so I got to perform, you know. And that pain piece is such a beautiful teacher, you know, if we're listening. And if we choose to listen and not numb, you know, and not be distracted. And there's all these ways we can numb, you know, it's not, you know, for me, it can be food, you know, but there's so many ways that we can numb. And being able to sit with the pain and notice where is it coming from, and then take it back.
Yes.
Where was it? Where did it originate? And I understand too, Sheba, that there's some pain in my body that wasn't from this life, from me. It's
the
Yep. Absolutely. That historical trauma of oppression shows up in my body. And I am determined to break that generational,
Yes.
whatever, folks want to call it, with me practicing being still, acknowledging the pain, and even making peace with pain. This life is not about, and I get it, everyone should have peace. I really believe that. But on this mundane level where everything is very hierarchical, this is a painful space. And I believe my best contribution to folks, to humanity, is showing you through my modeling and my words how to navigate pain. How to navigate pain, as well as, of course, I wanted to stop, right? So yeah, I was like, nope, no, do want it to stop.
Like, get out of here. Thank you. We acknowledge you, your purpose. We did the reflection. I need you to roll out now.
Like, enough. I wanted to stop, but understanding that probably in my lifetime, it's not going to stop. So it's important.
Yes.
It's important. There's the reality, and then there's the dreaming and visioning that I do. And I hold on to that as well. So it's the both and. I'm navigating that pain is a realistic understanding, especially in this oppressive kind of way of living. But also I do hold on to my dreaming and visioning a day when folks don't have to navigate this.
Yes.
That's really important, because the both and, because we can get so locked into the resistance of oppression, the resisting of feeling pain, that can even become a distraction. So remembering to dream and vision, what would life look like? What would our children, what could school look like if we didn't have oppression? What would you be doing? That's why we bring that into the yoga teacher training, the dreaming and visioning, really important. Yes, we have to navigate what's going on now, but don't lose sight of our, keeping our eye on the prizes.
And that's the thing, when you can see it, you can co-create the pathway to achieving it.
Absolutely.
And I think, I don't remember, I was talking to Medina today, and this came up in our conversation. There is always a pathway to bringing forward the energy we desire.
Yes.
As long as we make that space to be aware of what is. Some people use these comments that are like, oh, this person is who they is, they'll never change. And the reality of that is that there isn't time. This person hasn't made time for deeper self-reflection for whatever the reason is.
Right. Right.
There are multitudes of reasons why we don't engage that space. And some of us don't have access to that space.
Right.
And so when I think about folks who are having these conversations with our children, I think about what is the pathway that you are walking that honors any movement forward for humanity. Not one that is just a DEI certification, not one that is just saying, oh, well, I have to do this in my classroom, but one that says, I'm going to lead this process knowing that I want all of our children to be safe, and that any child in this space, this is something you've said in the past, any child in this space is my child.
Right. Absolutely.
Right? Any child here is my child. What happens when educators really hold that to their heart?
Ooh, it's a revolution. It would be a revolution. I went to school with the teachers.
Yes.
Yeah, I was frightful that my kids would be in their classes with my classmates. It was frightful because the level of obliviousness, unawareness about how I couldn't even talk about racism when I was in school at Pitt. I remember I still have the letter that I wrote in a class almost 20 years ago. And, I was told that, we just need to be nice. I was like, that's your answer to racism? Absolutely not. It's so much more than that. And you're blaming poor people for being poor. And you're
Right.
blaming children's families for not thriving. No, you need
And
to
making
look.
money off of it too. Blaming and making money, holding positions and jobs and organizations to address this wound in human history.
Right.
Sorry, big sis. Just wanted to add that profit piece.
No, that's so, I know that's how we talk. That's not a thing.
Mm-hmm.
No, it's so important. Like, we can't blame the children and the families. We cannot. Yeah, it's for systemic issues. And systemic understanding, as we've inquired, these many years, systems of oppression are real.
Yep.
But we as the humans make up these systems so we can change. But it's going to take a commitment to grow on our part. The most liberal folk who don't think that they have work to still do are even more problematic than proclaim racist, and so hear me when I say, if you don't feel as though you need to change or grow, and intellectually or academically, you got all the social justice words down, you can write a Black Lives Matter statement. But if you're not committed on a personal level to change and to grow, then you're problematic to this movement. And a lot of the teachers I went to school with were problematic, caused more harm than help.
Yes.
So the work that needs to be done is on ourselves as individuals. Something that I was just talking with another friend earlier. And no teacher goes to school with the idea that they're going to punish Black and brown students more, that they're going to have their eye, the eye gaze, that eye gaze research. They're not going to, I'm going to look at Black and brown children to see if they're, doing something wrong. But that's what has happened. So, but if you don't recognize you're part of the problem, and it's like, okay, what are my biases and prejudices, and who's holding me accountable for me growing and changing? Like, I'm asking these children who are in front of me to grow and change.
Yes.
That's the hierarchy. Like, where's the reciprocity of relationship? My children should be able to hold me accountable. I raised Cleveland and Maya to hold me accountable to what I say is important to me. Well, Mom, if you said this is important, but, this is how you're acting and this is how it's affecting me. You should be able to receive correction from the children in your classroom.
And how courageous of children, regardless of the consequence, to name those things that they see in us, that we say, oh, that child is too smart. They too fast with their words. That kid is a bad kid. When children are naming what they're seeing and what they're feeling. Oh. They're naming what they are seeing and what they're feeling. And they have the perfect view of you. I'm already clear. Let me tell you already, I'm already clear and doing the work to receive a loon, talking about the ways that I am not in alignment with what I am preaching. I'm already clear that that's going to show up. Every day it is a work. It takes work. It is a work of art. It is a work of heart to get up knowing that I am a part of a larger context. And that movement that you talked about, Felicia, we're talking about the evolution of humanity. Some folks be getting it twisted. We're not here. This is the evolution of humanity. We did a thing that ain't working. A lot of people are getting hurt, harmed, violated, have been historically. Let's take a pause and actually heal some of those wounds. And it is accessible.
Right. Yes,
we're not talking about things that are not accessible. We are talking, get you a therapist, okay? Get you some books.
Get you some friends who be honest with you.
There you go. Get you some friends who are going to sit and have a conversation with you, and also who are going to sit you down and name the ways that they are seeing you harm yourself.
Right.
Felicia, I will never forget. I'm going to just that when we were in the hotel in Seattle, you know what I'm saying? I was called to the room, y'all, and I was shooketh. Okay. I was shooketh. But Felicia and Amanda, y'all sat me down. Well, I sat down on my own free will.
Right, yeah.
And I had my own open heart to hearing what you all have to say, because we have committed to understanding our internalization of the oppression that lands on our bodies. And y'all said to me, I need to do better in caring for myself. Was it a lie? No. Did I want to hear you say it? Hell no. Nah. Was my stomach bubbling and I had to use the bathroom 4 times over? Absolutely. It's like going to the principal's office and you don't even know what's going on, you know? So it was a very tender space for me. It was challenging to hear someone outside of me naming the things within myself that I know I needed to cultivate that space for, and was fighting to find accessibility. But these were bodies who were co-creating that space of accessibility with me. So being in relationships of reciprocity, as you named, allows us to see, feel, and be clear about what's coming into the room with us. How are we arriving in this moment with that child, those children in our classroom? Is it February when our classroom starts to look a little fly? You know, how are we organizing the rest of the year? How are we creating this integrative practice of elevating all of humanity?
Right, right. When children are valued in a classroom, and I've seen it, they're able to even banter back and forth with a teacher, and it's respectful. Oh my gosh, there's no greater teacher. I mean, the level of self-esteem and self-confidence in those children, it's on 10. Because they feel valued, they feel heard. It's not saying, I hear you. No, it's I hear you, and you know what? Now you're right. I need to change this. And so I also need you to extend grace to me, because this is the way I've been doing it for a long time. And so when I go back to the old way of doing it, please let me know. How many teachers are even saying that to youth and children?
Not one has ever. I have never experienced it. Oh, actually, there was one person, Marie Volsey. High school. She was very clear with us. She was very much the aunt in the school who made sure we were going to our classes, that we were doing our work. If we needed food, if we needed anything, she was the person that we could go to, and we could actually talk freely. The only person, and I never took one of her classes, okay? I was never in class with her. So I didn't have the luxury of being in that nourishment for hours in a day. It was just an escape for me. And so also the thing I want to mention, which is important, super important, we have to look at the history of the education system in general. It is fucked up and problematic from the inception of it. It is to train the body and mind into a very particular way of being and engaging the social structure that has been offered to us.
Right.
The looking at Black and brown bodies, that doesn't extend itself only in the classroom. It follows our children outside of the classroom, onto the bus, when they go to the store, when they're on their way to their jobs, when they are living and existing in their bodies wherever they are.
That's so fair.
So if we're really trying to uproot this, teachers need that support from the actual building structure that holds the energy of history. I think of schools sometimes as haunted houses that have really deep, painful memories etched into the flesh of the seats, the walls, lack of air conditioning. So our sweat and body is left in the room that we are supposed to absorb knowledge.
I know.
And receiving that energy from a being who is not yet clear about themselves. It's like a double hit.
Oh, absolutely.
And so, yeah.
I'm feeling, with that visual that I just got from the school. And I'm thinking of the genius study. So children are geniuses. Most children, I think it's like 90%. Children are geniuses before they go to school. And as they get older, that genius goes down significantly. And
Yep.
being childlike is really tapping into your creativity all the time. School doesn't tap into our creativity. It asks us to fit in a box, color inside the lines, right or wrong. It doesn't even, that level of critical thinking, the deeper levels of critical thinking, debate, as I had shared about, being able to hold relationships of reciprocity with our youth and children in the classroom. It's not even set up that way. Even the way like our schools are set up, all of the focus is on the teacher, in traditional spaces, but it's not. In order, like I just spoke with this friend about, I don't believe in school reform. I really do believe we need to dismantle the whole system and start over, because the foundation, just as you spoke, is based on capitalism and white supremacy. And that hierarchical, patriarchal BS. So we can, so it's like the foundation of it. We have to go to the foundation and uproot it. Just changing the building, so we can even take that building, right? And put, make it really beautiful, but it's still that
rooted,
that grounded foundation is still rotted, So yeah, we can do this. And that's why we've not been effective in uprooting oppression, because the foundation, we may change a room, put some paint, do a more cooperative groups kind of, but still it's the foundation of that school is still very much rooted in white supremacy, culture, and capitalism, and you're right.
Yes.
You're right. It's more of assembly line kind of, or it's the elitists, so it's either, it's just that it's that 2-track system, where it was started, and we have to what is it going to take to uproot the foundation? And how many teachers and administrators really believe that? And so this crosses that line of assimilation. We need to work. So I don't need to resist, systemic racism, capitalism is so big. I'm not going to do that myself. And that's why we need to come together and have these conversations. That's why we need to organize. And it goes back to Youth Undoing Institutionalized Racism. We need to come together and understand that if we don't uproot the foundation, then 7 generations out, we're going to still be back at this point.
And that is the conversation today. Who am I, the self-work in race talk with young children? You need to get into your roots. And even more than getting into your roots, you need to get all up in that mycelium that is supporting the interconnectedness of trees of humanity.
Yes.
So when we talk about uplifting those roots, we are literally talking about going into yourself, seeing who you are, what behaviors you have, where those behaviors are coming from, the ideologies that are nurturing your praxis, your way of being, and check yourself if you say, those things you can't teach an old dog a new trick. That's not true.
No, it's not.
That's a lie we tell ourselves so that we're not accountable for doing the work within ourselves at certain points in our tenure in humanity. But this is about the evolution of all of us and all of our children. And as Becca Zella said, I got to throw this one in here. We are about creating brave and courageous spaces. Folks are trying to create safe spaces, but you can't tell me if this space is safe.
No.
But what you can do is, it's never been,
Right.
but you can model vulnerability in a way that allows me to show up in myself and myself being received in a way that offers care and value and thank you for this contribution of existing and sharing and orating into the collective consciousness. Because no matter what we do, we are always pouring our knowledge back. Any download we have from the universe, however we see spirituality, any download is either emoted through our body, digested through our body, and digested through the mind.
Absolutely.
And we are emoting that energy into this realm. So I'm waiting for my son to find those spaces of curiosity, to name what is showing up for him, and for me to be humble and grateful.
That's it.
And grateful that he feels comfortable enough to communicate and orate how he is seeing and navigating the patterns and messages that he is observing in this world.
Right.
And naming the inheritance that has been left by everybody on this call and everybody in humanity.
Right. Yeah.
So what you said about children being just full on explorers and curious and giving and sharing, I see that with my human. It's through him that I'm able to more clearly see a pathway for myself.
Right.
Because even in the pain Joy lives, they live on the same block. It's like a duplex, you know, Airbnb duplex. They be coming in and out, you know, they live right around the corner. They go to the duplex. Like our energies are constantly living with each other. So the work that I want to do is lift the feelings I have that are connected to these energies that are showing up for me that aren't exactly what I want to be doing. I have this behavior. I'm so mad at myself for doing this behavior. But what if I said, oh, I'm living with this energy. So how can I work with this energy in support and service of myself and others? And that's my final word on the vibe session.
That's beautiful, Shiva.
Oh, Felicia, thank you for this conversation.
Yes, this is so beautiful. We could go on.
Like, yes.
And I know Medina's here.
I'm going to just say, y'all sprayed us with all the jewels. All the jewels, you know, so I just captured a few things that I just want to reiterate and share with the audience. And then for anything else, you just have to be here. You're gonna have to catch that replay. Okay. So one thing I heard was, without a commitment to grow and change, you're problematic to this movement, which is the evolution of humanity.
I share.
Right?
Yes.
On checking in, I don't know is often the answer to how are you, and we need spaciousness to tap into what's there. I heard that as well.
Yes.
All right. I heard the importance to know the history and conception of whiteness and race and the hierarchy of white supremacy and the history of the education system, and that schools as haunted houses. That metaphor is definitely sticking to me.
That's it.
And then I also heard it's the importance of living a more cooperative lifestyle, and that our children learn from how they see the adults live. They are our guides, they are our teachers, and they are our accountability partners.
Partners.
Woo!
Yes.
Medina, run that back. Yes. Yes.
Oh my goodness. So we're gonna get into this Q&A here.
Yes.
All right. And please feel free to put your questions in the Q&A section. So I'm gonna just get us started with a question and then jump into, okay. Yeah, actually, I'm gonna start with this question. So this question is from Olav or Olave. Forgive me if I mispronounced your name. The question is, how do we navigate these discussions at work amongst timid colleagues and those who remain indifferent about more that needs to be done?
Okay, Shiva.
This question here. It's I'm laughing out of nervousness, and my anxiety is popping up because this question is very specific to recent lived experiences. I think first of all, I don't have an answer. I want to name that. I don't have an answer because you're talking about relating to the beings in that particular space.
Right.
And there is one piece that I can offer that has been freeing and liberating for me. And Felicia, something you said actually opened up that space for me. There was a point where I had to commit to existing as I am. And that looked like a variety of different things. I was still impacted, still feeling challenged, still very clear of not feeling safe and comfortable. But it's only now that I'm out of particular energies that I'm able to say, it was violent of me to expect people to engage me in conversations around transparency and honesty who were not there to have those conversations. I was ready and wanting, but I can't force other people to be there with me. But what I can do is live in my authenticity. And that takes a lot of courage and strength, because there are consequences to existing as you are that go beyond, yes, you doing it. That's a consequence too, right? That clap of you doing it. And then there's the other side of you're doing too much. You taking up this breath in this space is not, I'm not okay with this, so I'm going to passively engage you. Ooh. It exists and it lives there. So I just want to name that I don't know the answer to that question, but I do know that whatever faculties you have within your own body, whatever space you can bring in, if it's a curry dish that has an odor, bring that into the office. Bring your food palate culture. I used to not take food to school because I was worried about people's narrations about my culture food. So I'm here like not getting the taste that I need, the joy that I need, because I'm worried about others. So at work, I started bringing in my, my food and letting the odor waft through the space because I was there. I existed in that space also. So I stopped smalling up myself. Not always, but when I could control it, when I had the strength to, I took up space. Not always, but when I could.
Right. Thank you, Sheba. And I think you speak to, because the way I would answer that question is very similar to you. Like there is no one answer because it's really circumstantial, but you really have to employ discernment. My grandmother used to say, don't cast your pearls to the swine. I've spent a lot of energy and time having conversations about race or oppression with people who really were indifferent. That was a waste of time because me as a teacher thought that I could change them or I can impact their heart. When people are at that space that they're going to make a commitment to grow, they'll come to you or they'll seek, but people who are indifferent, I would say, do not waste your breath, please. If they're indifferent, it's not your responsibility to teach them. If they're already telling you that it's not a value to them. So spend our time on the people who are sincerely inquiring, that you see are making some movement and that are asking for your assistance. Because again, too, violence works both ways. If I'm giving advice to someone who really doesn't want it, that's a violent act as far as I'm concerned, because I'm forcing them to hear what I'm saying, and I get it. There's problematic relationships at work. That's a real thing, but you better have discernment because you're going to be exhausted. I'm here to tell you, it's exhausting to talk to people who don't value what you say and don't even believe. There's folks who don't even believe it, in racism. And I've decided I am not going to waste my time, but again, it's discernment. Circumstance, could change. But as a general, if I can make a generalization, don't waste your time.
That's a beautiful piece right there, Felicia. And I'll just say too, like, you don't know what you don't know. And those folks don't know the gift and bounty of what you're bringing to the table. Yeah.
And that's just, we give too much of ourselves and we literally give it. And again, it's not a relationship of reciprocity. I want relationships of reciprocity. And when there's no reciprocity, I need to figure out, like, either am I making money? Because like, what am I getting from this? You're not changing your mind, like you're paying me for this counseling session, but to
the
just
behaviors,
it's a violence towards ourselves.
Yes, because the behavior isn't changing and we're still impacted than developing frustration about the behavior that's still showing up after we done named the same thing 37 different times with different words that we took from the English language and other languages to express the same thing that's happening ongoing.
Yeah,
It's too much. It's exhausting.
Enough. And part of this practice too, with our Raja Yoga practice, is acceptance. So I need to accept that this is where you are. And now I have to watch that, because my acceptance can have a smugness to it. So I have to watch my motivation, because smugness, feeling that I'm better than, because I know more about this than you, and you don't even know how ignorant you are. I have to watch that, because I can easily slip into that, because that's violence, as I feel also. So, really that loving kindness, even when I know that the person doesn't see me and doesn't acknowledge my humanity, it's a practice.
Yeah.
It's a practice. Every damn day, it's a practice.
Thank you for that question. And thank you, Felicia. That was food. Food on a sister's plate.
You gave me the setup. I cannot keep up with the chat. I am so sorry, you all. So I'll have to, I want to go back and look and answer each person. So Medina, I'm so glad you're looking at it.
We got you.
Thank you.
I have another question for y'all. So y'all are so many things. Y'all are educators, cultural workers, artists who are in space with all kinds of humans, children, different age ranges. So in thinking about talking about race, what do you feel is the difference between talking about race with adults and talking about race with children, young children specifically?
See, Sheba, you mind?
No, this is your question. I literally was sitting here Felicia about to drop knowledge right now.
Oh, my knees.
Oh, that's a good question.
Activating some pain, y'all. I guess I'm speaking truth. It's moving through my body. Everything that we do as teachers or educators or trainers is developmentally appropriate. So, talking about any subject, we need to meet people where they are, and so that's our children, the same thing. And it's funny, I get this question a lot. My son was extremely precocious at 5. He was studying anatomy and physiology at 5 with me. So he could talk about, the arterial blood vessel. Another 5-year-old wouldn't be able to have that conversation with me. We need to meet people where they are, and our children and youth are the same way. We need to be curious about what it is they see. What are their perceptions? What are they thinking? They hear so much. There's so much we can learn from children. I just had a session, and this was a teenager though, so it's not a child, But if we give them space to share what they're, like Sheba has already said this too, what their perceptions, how are they seeing the world? What you see something on news, they hear something on the news, ask them, be curious. Adults, we're so in the vein of teaching. It's just one way. That's not a relationship of reciprocity, and no way can it be really healthy. We need to ask, be curious about what are they thinking, because they're thinking a lot.
Yes.
I heard just out on the playground, one of the children were playing, and these are children, playing hip hop. The N word came up. Now, the children who are playing hip hop appear to be white children. There's a little girl, I think she's Afro-Caribbean, big hair, Afro. She went over to them and she said, you know what? You're too light to say that word. You are not allowed to say that. This is a child. This is a child. Could you imagine what her mom and dad are conversation they're having at home with her? They're talking to her. She's telling him, and do you know this child listened to her? He turned it off. That's revolutionary. We need to listen to the children. Stop trying to teach them. They can teach us about this, and they can teach us where they are so that we can support them with resources. But stop trying to teach the children something that we don't even know ourselves. We don't even practice on a regular on our, like, are you really having conversations with your colleague that's honest conversations about race, about aggressions? No, most of us aren't. So you can go and talk to children. Yeah, I that gets me hot. I guess you can see that.
Yes.
I feel that in my body. It is infuriating. Listen to them, because you can learn something from the children. 100%, I guarantee. Ask, be curious, naturally curious, but that's going to take some work on the adults' part too.
Yes.
Because we're not naturally curious. We think we know. We really do. And the children need to lead us on this. We need to listen to them. I'm sorry, I got all excited, you all.
No, Felicia, that was so juicy.
I'm not sorry.
You're not sorry.
I'm not sorry.
No.
Yes, kids are already talking about it Yara said it. They've created language, and they're insightful.
Yes.
They have the solution.
Yes.
We're in this mess as an adult, and we can't even get out of it. We can't even have conversation with our colleagues at work that are 100% honest. We can't. Yeah. We're not there. So yes, listen to the children. Be curious.
Yes.
Learn from their perspective. Have something come up that was on the news or something they heard on the bus or whatever, and have conversation with them and listen to them. How about that? Be real revolutionary and change your ways. Change your ways. Really listen to them, because they're brilliant. They're brilliant, but we don't know how brilliant they are, because we're always in this, giving them knowledge and telling them what to do. Yeah, no, that's not the way out. It's not. Yeah.
I'm gonna just offer one piece. Ashe and all of that, Sister Felicia. That was everything and some extra. Okay. I felt like I was having fried plantains just now listening to you. Because the reality is, like,
I'm honored.
Folks need to recognize that there is no having a conversation about a subject matter that you don't embody.
Ooh.
All you're doing is perpetuating a narrative that doesn't exist for you. And then you're not able to follow up on that narrative. So you're creating a lie that you are telling our children, and you got to stop the lie, because you're lying to yourself and you're lying to our children. So how about start by creating a classroom where children can take up true space in their body, in their mind, in their curiosity, in their spiritness. Create an environment that allows for every single person in the room to come into a space of wholeness, because you are arriving in that space with wholeness, which means, because people get it twisted around what wholeness is, meaning that Medina said it earlier, like this healing culture is like you fix something. But it's not about fixing it. It's about arriving into the moment, knowing that it is a part of your history, and it becomes a part of your legacy. So do I want to be an alchemist? Absolutely. And I want to wield it in a way that honors me and the souls around me. So don't have a conversation about race if you ain't really having conversations about race. Don't come to my child as the first point of your practice.
Right.
Excuse me, I got a little drool on the lip. I'm getting passionate too. Okay. Like, don't come to our children as the first stop for you practicing. Practice with your parents. Practice, and in particular, white educators. And in particular, white woman educators who have the highest rate of suspending our Black and brown children.
That's real.
Check in with yourself, your historical identity, the legacy of your family in the context of the legacy of humanity. Do that work, fam.
Right.
Because again, this is about all of us moving forward into 2053. Okay, I'm trying to see it too. I want you to see it too. And I want to see it in a way that honors everyone, and that there is spaciousness for everyone. Right. So when we come to the question about how do I talk about race, start with yourself. How do you really feel about it? If you are openly racist in your heart, just name that for yourself. Be okay with it and live your life in a way that honors that, because children will see you for who you truly are. And then they become the target of your rage because they are naming for you the thing that you couldn't name for yourself. Take that to the principal's office. What? Dropping all the mics. That one, I used to see that happening all the time in the classroom.
Yeah.
Children being honest and naming what is, and they're getting the consequences of the adults' lack of awareness.
Yeah.
I'm gonna stop there because,
beautiful.
ooh, Felicia, you know, I don't know about hot flashes, warm moments, something's happening.
Energy moving through.
Yes.
That was some hot fire there. And this is applicable to any, you know, adult-child relationship, whether it's, you know, an adult in the community with children, to if you're parenting children as well, like that is really, really applicable. Y'all are getting lots of love in the chat. So let us please, you know, say hey, shout out, give it up.
Hi, beautiful people.
Hello, you all. Thank you so much.
Yes.
This is beautiful.
Yes, yes, yes. So many jewels. And, you know, I highly recommend everybody, if you got time, to watch the replay, because so much wonderful information was being dropped. So on behalf of Pride and everyone in the audience, I thank y'all. Don't go nowhere, people. Don't go nowhere. We got a couple things for you. So we're gonna transition now. We want to just ask you a quick polling question, and then we're gonna do our raffle of this book right here. It might be backwards, but it's The Inner Work of Racial Justice by Rhonda McGee. So this poll, right? The question is, did you learn something new about how adults can become better prepared to engage in race talk with young children, right? So you can answer with a single choice. First option is a yes in all caps with the exclamation points. Then there is the yes, right? And then there is the no, and then the no in all caps and exclamation points. I feel like, you know, anyway, that's probably not gonna even be engaged, but because there was so much learning happening here. So take a moment to do that poll. Do it, if you can, do it in the poll function, so that we can catch the answers on the back end. That would be great. But I see in the chat, big capital yeses with exclamation points all up and through there. All right. Okay. All right. Oh, yes, yes. Lots of thank yous. And we're gonna do our raffle right now, before y'all go, and just our little wrap up with some resources that you definitely want to know about. So I'm just going to call a couple of names of people who won the raffle. You'll get this book directly delivered to you via Amazon. Okay, so it'll be, we'll look in the registration form, and then we'll email you to get your mailing address, and then we'll send it directly to you. So you have this great book. Like I said, it expounds upon a lot of what was discussed this evening in this topic. So the names of the raffle winners are Judy Graca or Graca. Forgive me, please, if I mispronounced that. Graca. That's winner number 1. And then Carrie Finkelstein, you are winner number 2. So you will receive, we'll reach out to you, and you'll receive the book in the mail once we get your mailing address. All right. Oh, I see some yay. Everybody's happy for you, raffle winners. Okay. So then we're going to have our closing slide with some resources that you want to know about, coming up in 1 second, but there's lots of positive energy in the chat as our slide comes up. All right, so we want to definitely send a big shout out and thank you for being here. And just remember to keep a lookout for our upcoming Pride Speaker Series events. we're planning to have the history of race and racism as a focus for August 2022. So just like, Felicia and Sheba talked about, it's important to know the history of race and racism, the history of whiteness, the history of educational systems. So we're hoping to cover that in our speaker series in August. And then looking at race and the profession, and particularly the early childhood care profession for November 2022 as well. So be on the lookout for that. And then in terms of resources on the right-hand side, you have our website, the Pride program, racepride.pitt.edu. So always check us out. And if you're interested in our professional development, reach out to us and contact us on the website, and then we'll be sure to catch it and get back to you. Also, as a resource, we have Yoga Roots on Location. Okay. So, I have been a participant in the yoga teacher training and self-care boot camp, and it really was life-changing for me. So I recommend y'all check out the site and all of the offerings, because there's a yoga teacher training, as well as some additional workshops and offerings, retreats and things, lots of yummy good things. So that's yogarootsoonlocation.com. And then last but certainly not least, we have the Soul Focus group, which is Yoga Roots on Location's anti-racist training workshop offering in the yoga teacher trainings, where Soul Focus group conducts workshops and consulting for organizations seeking to move beyond racism and into power. So that's soulfocusgroup.com. All right. So again, we want to thank you for joining us this evening. You could have been anywhere, but you chose to be here. Many thanks to the Pride team, to the audience, to Sheba Gittins and Felicia Savage Friedman, and all of us here doing this work, here, there, and everywhere. So good evening, good night, and hope to see you again real soon. Peace.
Oh, that was awesome. Sorry, Adam, I got that in.
Oh, that was perfect, Felicia.
Oh my gosh, Sheba, there was so much more I wanted to say.
Oh, so much. I'm like, there needs to be a part 37 so that we can continue.
Oh my God, it's a good thing my camera and my mic was off, because I just kept saying yes, yes, yes. And I was cracking up because you all were entertaining and knowledgeable and